Grace and peace. Welcome to another edition of MACKin With Christ. I'm your host, Thais Sherelle. Today we're talking to two extremely motivating individuals that traveled around the globe to make life safer, to just help people in countries such as Africa, a country where people are suffering from lack of medical supplies, education, and diseases running throughout the land. Today I would like to welcome Perla and Joseph Morris. Welcome. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Now, I understand that you two have been in Africa for over 20 years. What was the process in getting you from the United States to Africa? I mean, what was the motivating factor to go across the country?
Well, I didn't go to Africa from United States. I went to Africa from the Philippines. When I was growing up, it was something I wanted to do, something I've always been attracted to. And when there was an opportunity for me to go there, there was a group of people who were interested in recruiting people to work over in Africa. And I was interested, so we made the connections.
Now, you talk about being interested. What was it that interested you in going to Africa? Was it the situation that was happening there? Explain to us what was going on that made Perla want to go from the Philippines into, such a place as Africa.
I was interested in something going beyond the boundaries of my own country. And there were opportunities in different countries. And I was really not saying particularly Africa, any place outside the Philippines. But then the opportunity was offered to me. Africa was a place that had possibilities for me. And I was really very glad to go there.
Okay, now you see Perla's trying to get around it. What about it? Why don't you tell us, what was it that made you want to go there? Did you see a need there? Why don't you tell us about it?
You're born with a sense of adventure, okay? Something is out there that you want to see. Then you grow up with a faith. You want to help people. You want to make sure that things are right. You believe that you have something that you can contribute to help people. You believe in God. God has spoken to you in some way that says that you can do this. We sing that song all the time about how's that song go, Perla? I have called you.
I have called you by name.
By name, and so you believe these things. And the opportunity arises. I went from the United States, I went to Kenya, Tanzania, actually Tanzania first, Kenya, and then into Sudan. But I went there with a church group because the church has a mission to spread the church around the world. I believed in that. I believed that that's what we should do. So I joined up with them and went.
So we're talking about a need. You said there was a need. Now, when you went with the church, it was the spiritual need that you were going for at first, or was it for development?
It was the spiritual need, because when I got over there, I wasn't sure exactly what I'd be doing, so it was this faith-based belief that I had that I could contribute something to people who maybe knew less about the church than I did. Okay, so I went over there with that idea in mind. When I got there and saw all the other kinds of problems that existed, like in terms of development, you're coming from the United States, you take it for granted that everybody has access to things in the world. You get over into other places, you find out they don't have access. So you start trying to bring it together,
Okay, look at the people in the camera. So, Perla, did you go over with the church as well?
Yes, I did. But when I went first I went to Tanzania, and there was a need for school teachers, and I was a trained teacher, so I went there with that in mind. But as Joe was saying, when you go there, it's a spiritual thing, I guess. When you talk about interest, there's a yearning within you to go beyond your boundaries, to be able to share what you have with other people and be able to learn what when you go out there and be with people.
Okay, out there in Tanzania and Africa, what was the greatest need?
Well, it's very difficult to say what the greatest need is, because you tend to compare what you have and what other people don't have. But they also have a lot of things that they have, the richness of the people that other countries don't have, that we can learn from them. You say it's a poor country if you talk about the material things, if you talk about good roads and big buildings and stuff like that. They don't have as much as like Europe or United States or all these developed countries. So you talk about development in many different things, either material things or people's own development in their relationships with other people.
Now, what about the education that was going on there? When you went there with the church and you did some spiritual ministering to people, but you were also helping out with the schools, and what was that process like? What was going on?
Me? I never taught in any of the schools. Perla did that. But well, the thing was, we went there and see the church in most of these countries now, Kenya, Tanzania, is pretty well established. I didn't know that when I went there, but when I got there, I found that it was that way. And they had already started processes of dialoguing with people about doing some particular things. Schools were a big thing. Like, one of the things that we got involved in at my end of it was building schools. So putting up the buildings and trying to raise funds from the United States mostly. And then we built buildings. One particular one that we did was a lot of opportunities for education were limited in Kenya. People could go to primary school. Then you had to pass very difficult tests to qualify for high school. And then you had to pass more difficult tests to go on to another level of high school. And then you had to pass more tests to go on to university. All the time, people were eliminated from these education opportunities. So we started Polytechnic, which was to give the kids who did not pass to go on to higher education opportunities to learn trades, things like that.
So we went there and we, guided them spiritually and we helped them with their education. Now, what was it? There had to be something that was going on across the seas that would keep you there for 20 years. I mean, when you went with the missions, did you think you were going to be there for 20 years? Or, usually you go for a couple of years or 1 or 2 years, but 20 years. I mean, something had to be so compelling, or the need had to be so great that you felt that you can make an impact.
I think part of our contribution there is that together with the people, if you see a need, you develop that, whatever need it was. Like the first project that I was involved in Kisii was working with the youth. Those who were not able to continue with their education, we provided some projects. We worked together with a community so that they would be involved in projects. Once those projects were they were able to continue on their own and supported by the community, we were able to move on to other projects, to other places where there were expressed need by the community. Like, for example, in a place in Kenya, in the desert, where most of the women were not able to go to school, but they were very interested in learning how to read and write. So we were able to develop adult literacy classes, and the teachers who were trained to do the classes followed the people, because they're the nomads in the desert. So the teachers were trained so that wherever the people moved, the teachers also moved with them. And they developed the adult literacy, not just learning to read and write, but also to talk about situations that they may face, like lack of water, lack of medicine, or lack of anything that they would need for their families.
So I'm sure that, the people, they really receive the education in the building. Now, how did they receive Christianity? Because in Africa, they tend to have their own religious beliefs and things of that nature. So when you came in there with the church and you're telling them about religion, I mean, what was the immediate reaction from the people?
Well, when we went there, as I said, the churches were developed. So a lot of our initial work was with communities that had already become Christian. And because churches were involved in conversion work and stuff like this in Africa for a lot of years. But it was after you got there and you started to realize that they had some nuances to, as you come from a culture, you have different understandings of who God is, how God works with his people, and things like this. And those they would be spelled out in cultural things. And this was interesting. This was really interesting. To sit down and say to somebody, this is what we learn from the Bible. We'll read you this passage. How does God talk to you? And then they give you a lot of the same kinds of things that we believe, but with nuances that enhanced it, really made it nice.
So you found, basically that they were already kind of practicing the same faith, but with little differences in them. And okay, so you're going out there to Africa, Tanzania, and the church is already built. So you got most of the work is done for you. But 20 years is a long time, and not only did you help the people, but you guys found each other out there, huh? I mean, you came from the Philippines and you came from the U.S. Somewhere, God bless them. It's amazing the way God can take you. You may think you're going to meet someone in your backyard, but sometimes God might take you on the field to meet that special person in your life, and you guys have been together ever since. I mean, Pearl, is that the secret, to go to Africa for all the single people out there to find Mr. Right?
Probably somewhere, sometime, there was somebody there, but no, that wasn't the reason for going there. But I want to go back to your question about how did, all this religion, discussing about the religion. Because as you relate with people, they talk about the things that are very important in their lives. They're things of value, and we really share the same faith. We just don't use the same names, but we share the same faith, and the values that are important to us are also the same values that are important to them. They recognize that there's a being greater than human beings, and their relationship with the families, their neighbors, their communities. They're all like, we believe in the community of God. We believe in people sharing their faith, sharing their life together. You know, so it's not really going there and making them all the same as what I believe in, because they already believe in the same things.
So you would say from your interaction that they already realize that God is there and they're experiencing that, but the way they celebrate God and the way they minister is a little different.
Yes.
And that's wonderful to know, because one of the things that we find, there's so many different religions out there, and one of the problems that we have, or the discrepancies that we find in the churches and just inside the religious sector, is that people are saying, well, you know what, I pray to Buddha, it's the same kind of higher power. But of course, you know, as a Christian, I will always say that there's only one God. And you have to be careful with that, because you'll have people out there, and praying to Buddha is not, to me, is not praying to the same thing as God. But you will have different people. For instance, with the Morrises here, who are Catholic based, and I come from a Pentecostal, we're still praying to the same God. Now, that's a difference than someone praying to Buddha or something like that. I had the experience of going out to a Catholic church with family and some friends, and I was just amazed, because there was one point where I said, oh, you know, the Catholics do this and I do that. But they were praising God, and they were, you know, they believed that Jesus Christ came and that he was born to save us, and that he died and he rose again. And I says, wow, they actually believe. When I sat down to really listen to what was going on, they believe the same thing that I do. So you got to be careful that we embrace our brothers and our sisters, because sometimes they may not worship the way we worship. You may pray and fast 3 hours. Someone else may pray and fast for only, 1 hour. Or they may not fast at all. But we have to be careful to understand what being a Christian is all about and how we worship, because there's one Lord, but there's many ways to worship. And of course, going back to Perla here, you may not have to go all the way to Africa to find somebody. So for all of you single people who are struggling here in the United States, there's still hope for you. Keep praying and keep believing. One of the things that's just awesome, I find, is that people are called to do different things in their lives, and there's so many different ways of ministering to people. Now, you guys went across the country, you went to Tanzania and to Africa, but then you came back here to the United States, and you're still in that same field, just in different areas. There's a void and there's an emptiness overseas, but right here in the United States, there's a big void, there's a gap, and people are suffering. And the Morrises have been out there to minister, even in the shelters. How was that? How do you find the difference, or is there a difference, the way you had to minister and help people in Tanzania and Africa, and the way you're helping people here in the United States?
Most of my involvement in Africa has really been working with women. And since that time there, you would say, passion, or my interest, or what I really would like to do is work with women, especially women who don't have a voice, or women who are struggling in the society. So the last project I was involved in Africa is with women who left prison, and because they are very poor, they don't have any support. But the women, they were able to network and work together in order to improve their lives. And here, the work I'm involved in, I work for the city, and I work with women who are pregnant, or women with very young children. And they are, I'm just very interested in the cause of women. Because they have such an impact in the society. If they're better parents, they're able to raise their children better, and the children will grow up, and they're the future of our society.
And thus you see right there the example of Christ to come that we might have life more abundantly. And of course, God, he's already sent his son, and he's not going to send him again until the end when he comes to take us back as his own. But right now, we are his hands and we are his feet and we are his legs. So, you know, some of you may say, oh, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a priest. You don't have to be. You're his hands and his legs. And just like they've been out and they've been in the overseas, and they're right here working, helping people that need help. There's a lot of people out there that are lost, or somehow they feel that life has cheated them out, and it's up to you to bring the light to them. And I would find it robbery, you know, talking to the Morrises here, who have been such a motivation in my life, and let Mr. Morris get away without singing one of those nice spiritual African songs and the language, you know. So I know you're saying, Thais, don't let them get away with it. Okay, what? I hear you out there, and I'm going to help you out. Mr. Morris, come on, share some of that African language and some of that song with us.
Song. Egetero. Nyumbo. Perla.
No,
Sing.
she said Mr. Morris.
I know, but start it off.
Which one is that?
Do Malaika.
I can't sing. Go ahead.
Do it.
Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Sasa nifanyeje, kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sinawe, ningekuoa malaika. That's enough.
Well, you know what? I think we better look for this in our local music store. That was beautiful. And you're sitting here talking about you can't sing. That was just so beautiful and so peaceful. Okay, you want them to record it? Okay, we got to get a recording session and record that. Foreign music by Joe and Pearl Morris ministering in your home. Now, okay, I'm not fortunate to, you know, I may have African American in my ancestry, but I know nothing about African language. What did you just sing?
Oh boy.
Okay, now it's really a love song.
It's a love song. It's a love song, and it tells a song about an African boy man who's interested in this woman, and he calls her my angel, Malaika. So
and I want to marry
he says,
you.
I want to marry you, but I have one big problem. My dowry is not enough.
I'm poor.
And I'm poor, and I'm going to have a big problem getting you married.
Okay, I think they just sang for us the song that drew the two of them together. That's really their love song. That, you know, Mr. Morris didn't have enough money to win over Pearl, so, you know, Malaika. Okay.
He didn't have a camel to give me.
All right. But thank you so much for sitting in and watching another episode of MACKin With Christ. We've definitely been blessed by your stories of missionary travels, love, you know, finding love overseas, and even if you can't pay for it, you know. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our show today. May God bless you and may heaven smile upon you.
Psalms 120. In my distress, I cried unto the Lord, and he heard me. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. I don't know why I was crying. Oh no, I thought that I was dying. I don't know why I was so lonely, but I wondered why I was so sad.